You know, we all do it every single day. We eat. But have you ever stopped to think that every meal is like a chapter in the entire story of humanity? That's what we're doing today. We're going to go way beyond just what's on the plate to see how food isn't just fuel. Nope. It's the very force that shaped our bodies, our brains, basically our entire world.
So, when you think of the greatest human invention, what comes to mind? The wheel, right? That's what everyone says. But what if? What if the biggest game changer wasn't a thing at all? What if it was just a technique? What if our whole story really kicked off with a simple flame and, well, a barbecue? And honestly, the evidence for this it's incredible. See, when our ancestors figured out how to cook, it wasn't just to make their food taste better. No way. It was the spark that kicked off this massive evolutionary chain reaction. So, come on, let's trace that story together, from the very first campfire all the way to what you're having for dinner tonight. We're going to see just how much what we eat has made us who we are.
All right, first up, let's rewind the clock, way back to the beginning, to really get a grip on just how huge a simple hot meal was for our evolution.
Okay, so check this out. Dr. Ara Norenzayan calls it outsourcing digestion, which is just a brilliant way to put it. Think about it like this. Your body's a factory, right? Before cooking, that factory spent a ton of energy just breaking down raw food. But once we had fire, well, the fire started doing a lot of that work for us. It pre-digests all those tough fibers and proteins. And just like that, boom, our bodies suddenly had this massive energy surplus.
So, the big question is, where did all that extra energy go? Well, it didn't go to building a huge gut like our primate cousins have. Nope, it went straight to our heads. I mean, our bodies literally changed. Our jaws got smaller, our teeth shrank, our digestive tracts got shorter, all because the fire was doing the heavy lifting. And all that freed up energy, it fueled the explosive growth of the most complex, most energy-hungry organ we have, the human brain.
But you know, this whole revolution wasn't just physical. That same campfire, the one that shrank our guts and grew our brains, it also became the very first human living room. It was the place you'd gather, share stories, connect. Suddenly, eating wasn't just about surviving anymore. It became the bedrock of community, of ritual. It was really the start of our entire social world as we know it.
And that social piece is just so important. Because as soon as we started sharing meals, food stopped being just, fuel. It became a container for our culture, our identity, our whole history.
I mean, think about it. A recipe is never just a recipe, is it? Shirley Ting puts this so well. She talks about how her grandma's cooking tells the story of her entire life. A journey from Jiangxi to Macau to Hong Kong. It's all right there, in one dish. Food literally becomes this living, edible archive of who we are and where we come from.
And get this, the way we even talk about food says so much about our cultural values. There was this one study. They showed French participants a picture of fried eggs. Their reaction? Breakfast. Simple. Then they showed the exact same picture to Americans. Their reaction? Cholesterol. Isn't that wild? It's a perfect little window into two totally different mindsets. One is all about the experience, and the other is focused on the health consequences.
And these cultural values, they run deep. Sociologist Dr. Amy Hanser points out that they're often tied up with things like gender. Just think about it for a second. When you picture a home kitchen, who's in it? Now, what about a professional restaurant kitchen? Yeah, those images in your head, they're not just random stereotypes. They're reflections of these really ingrained social roles that get played out every single day.
Okay, so we've got this beautiful, deep, slow story of food, right? But what happens when that story slams head-on into the pressures of the modern world? Well, that brings us to the dilemma we're all facing right now.
And this is a conflict that, let's be honest, most of us live every single day. We have this deep craving for that slow, meaningful connection you get from a home-cooked meal, but then there's reality. And reality is constantly pulling us toward what's quick, easy, and cheap. It's the classic battle, Sunday roast versus the drive-thru burger. And more often, the drive-thru's winning.
So how does this all play out in the real world, in our actual choices? Well, a recent study from Turkey gives us a really fascinating look at how this is happening, and it's a trend we're seeing all over the globe.
Now, to really get the data, we have to touch on one more key idea. Dr. Hanser reminds us that food has always been a kind of status symbol. You have your highbrow, sophisticated foods and your lowbrow, simple foods. But here's what's so interesting. The modern world is completely flipping that idea on its head.
And here's the big twist. That study, it found that traditional, home-cooked food is now seen as a luxury. How crazy is that? The very things that make it so special, the time it takes, the fresh ingredients, are the exact things that make it seem impractical for so many of us. In our world, time is the ultimate luxury good, and that has turned your grandma's cooking into a high-status item.
So let's look at the numbers. Why do people choose fast food? Okay, taste is number one. That makes sense. But look at what's right behind it, saving time, and just how easy it is to get. You put those two together, and that's almost half the reason right there. It's not just about what we want to eat anymore, it's about what we can manage to eat in our crazy, busy lives.
Now, let's flip it. Why do we choose traditional food? The number one reason by a long shot is health. This is a deliberate choice people make for their well-being. And right after taste, you see cultural connection. That's huge. It shows we're not just trying to feed our bodies, we're trying to feed our souls. We choose it because it's good for us and because it connects us to who we are.
And right here, this is the absolute core of the modern food paradox. Get this. A whopping 78% of the people in the study, the ones who are choosing fast food, also believe it's unhealthy. We know it's not good for us, but we do it anyway. Think about that. We are knowingly, consciously trading our long-term health for a little bit of short-term convenience.
So where does that leave us? Is there any way to fix this? To bridge the gap between the food that tells our story and the food that actually fits into our schedule?
Well, the research suggests a way forward, and it's not about abandoning tradition. It's about adapting it. First, it's about education, right? Reminding people just how valuable this food is for our bodies and our culture. Second, it's about making it just as easy and affordable to get as the fast food alternative. And finally, it's about getting creative, finding new ways to make these amazing, timeless meals actually work for our modern lives without losing what makes them so special.
And so we're left with this one big question. Food is our oldest story. It's a story that started around a campfire millions of years ago, and it's been passed down generation after generation. But now, as our world just keeps getting faster and faster, are we choosing to write a brand new, quicker chapter? Or are we in danger of letting that ancient, incredible story just fade away? The answer, for all of us, is probably sitting on our next dinner plate.